Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, fellow members of the discerning public. Welcome to the safe space where you can shut out the noise of an angry world and just let the good oil soak into your brain through your ears unimpeded. The good oil in the form of a little tech talk with Matthew Dickerson. So smush yourselves down into your comfy chairs while I welcome you to, while I welcome to the microphone, not you to the microphone, because you're at home, of course. I'm going to welcome to the microphone the man with the whole 10-litre bucket of good oil, the best oil, no less. Welcome, Matthew Dickerson.
Good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are listening to this in whatever time zone you are. How you going, James?
Yeah, I'm going very, very well.
So I've been doing a bit of travelling over the last week or probably last 2 weeks, just in the car a lot. I had to embarrassingly hire a diesel van for one of those particular treks. It
Did you have
does
to have a
hurt
big
me.
shower afterwards? Or?
I feel pained. I feel particularly pained when I call into a petrol station, although it shouldn't be called a petrol station because you get diesel there as well. I call into a service station.
Service station, yeah.
But they don't give service.
You don't give service.
No,
so it's just a fuel station?
A fuel station. Yep, I'll go with
that'll
that. And that feels bad when I'm sticking the nozzle in and injecting all that liquid explosive stuff into the van. But what struck me, so I've been driving an EV around as per normal over the last week and then had one little trip in a van. And it was interesting because each time I pulled up at a supercharger to charge up, it just seemed natural. I'd go and chat to the people that were nearby. Even if I was going in to grab something to eat at a cafe nearby, you just have a quick chat. How are you going? How's this particular vehicle going? Or
you compare notes.
That's right, a little comparison of notes. And it reminded of the urban myth, and I've probably mentioned this before, with combi vans back in the day, because my brother had a combi van.
Yeah.
He told me, and I don't think he was just pulling my leg because there were other combi owners who said the same thing, that in the driver's manual, which they had back in those days, it said, if you see another combi van owner, just give him a wave. Just that little brotherhood of combi van owners.
Yeah, right. It's a society.
And I was doing a story on something similar to that years ago. I thought, I'm going to research that. So I found a library of combi van manuals and I searched through those. I could not find anywhere in those manuals that said wave to other combi van
read
owners.
Between the lines.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I thought, well, it sounded good, but do you really think a manufacturer would say in their wave, no, that's a silly idea for them to put that in there. So it didn't happen. So, but it felt a bit like that with EV owners. Nowhere in the manual does it say chat to other EV owners, but when you pull up,
you just do.
You do, and you chat away to people. How's this go? Oh, I haven't seen this particular vehicle.
I've been charging up at a station and had people walking along the street come up and want to chat to you.
That's right. Yeah. They're fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And so when I did fuel up, and I haven't been to a fuel station for some time, when I did fuel up, I'm standing there and I thought, if I started talking to some people around me who are also fueling up their internal combustion engine vehicles, they'd think I was a bit creepy. They'd say, mind your own business.
This guy wants my money.
Well, maybe that, or maybe he wants to follow me home or some creepy thing. So I just sat there and stayed quiet and fueled up. So it does feel nicer at an EV fueling station, but I don't know whether it's because you're there a bit longer or you don't have to stand there holding a nozzle that you can go and chat.
Yeah.
I've been at ones, and not this particular trip, but where there might be, say, 4 cars all charging up, and there'll be 4 people gathered around having a chat about things, and what do you find with this? And you'll compare notes, as you said, and maybe you should try this. One of the things I really like is when I see a car that I haven't driven or don't know much about, so I'll go over and say, hey, how's this one go? What made you buy this one? So you get some information about that. So it's that sharing of notes and sharing of information. So it is that brotherhood. I hope it stays that way.
Well, I wonder if it's going to, particularly because we did a story several weeks ago that was about the super duper ultra chargers that they're getting out of China, which will charge your car in 4 minutes or something.
Yeah, so you have a quick conversation. You can compare notes very quickly.
You can step aside a couple of metres. You're not going to get much further than that, and then make your conversation really efficient. Yeah,
that's right. So it's a fascinating thing, but I like it. It does seem friendly. It does seem nice. And continue on. I think when people do it, I will. Hopefully people don't start to think I'm creepy when I chat to them, but I'm always after more information so I can chat to our listeners about it.
All right, folks, we better get this this episode started. I'm just scanning the libretto as I speak, and I see that we've got a story about all-terrain EVs now. For campers out there, that's going to be a good story there. Also, we love our robots here. We've got robots in the home and also robots in recycling depots, so a couple of different stories there. Uber is going a bit old school, and they're reviving the whole cash transaction. And Waymo, the autonomous taxi service that's been operating in America, is expanding. They want to go into more and more cities, so we'll tell you more about that. But today, we're going to start by farewelling an old friend of ours. It was once the go-to app for connecting with family and hosting corporate meetings. But COVID hit in 2020 and forced an evolution in the way things are done, and so sadly, the ravages of progress have taken its toll on our old friend Skype. Yes, the competition was too hot for Skype, and now it's set to take its spot on the shelf with the other classics from days of yore, like Alta Vista, MySpace and Napster. Matt, another internet classic, bites the virtual dust.
Yeah, and it is sad, actually. I have very fond memories of Skype because
it was new and it was fancy.
But it did something for me that was significant, and I've read some stories about Skype, about some significant things it did. But for me, one of the things that was significant was when I was very young, my eldest brother, who is about 16 years older than me, moved to America. So he'd gone off to university, he met someone from an American exchange student, and then when she went home, he followed her home, or back to her home, and married her and had kids and settled down in the US of A.
Yeah, right.
So my very early recollections of my eldest brother are slim because I was so young.
Yeah,
and he'd already gone to uni by the time, I was probably 2 years old by the time he was gone.
Yeah, were starting to kick in.
Correct. So when he was away, my very early memories of talking to my brother were, quick, Phil's on the phone, we've got to get this phone call done in a couple of minutes because it's costing us an arm and a leg.
Yeah,
so we'd all gather around
rates.
the phone.
Yeah.
We didn't have speaker phones back in those days, so you'd pass the phone, hi Phil, how you going? And you'd hear this thing at the other end that was paused, delayed, and just had a slight American twang. You go, hold on, is this my brother speaking to? Why do you have an American accent? So
and there's a little bip in the background as well every minute or so, wasn't it, counting down the minutes?
Just warning you that was another mortgage payment on your house that just went towards the phone bill.
Yeah.
So that was
bad enough with STD calls, let
that's
alone
right,
international.
yeah. Well, even I remember Mum going, it's so-and-so on the phone, it's STD, and everyone would run to the phone quickly. So that was the way I used to communicate with my brother. I didn't go over, I was too young to go and visit him overseas, and he would come back once every 5 years, and then finally something like Skype came along.
Yeah.
Now, he'd been overseas for several decades, a couple of decades before Skype came along, but again, suddenly I could talk to my brother, I could even see my brother, and I could do that for free. So computer-to-computer phone calls for free, wow,
It
internationally.
was crazy, yeah.
Unbelievable. And then, of course, video calls came in, and then they had cheap calls to landlines, international and local.
Yep.
So all these things, it was really revolutionising the whole concept of a telephone call because the telcos liked the fact that you had to go through their exchange because they can take some money off you along the way. Suddenly when you're going computer to computer for a call, the phone companies, I'm sure, would have been trying to shut it down or trying to say that this was a terrible idea. So it really started this whole revolution of video calls, of VoIP, things that were revolutionary. So that was in 2003.
But, I also remember that all of a sudden we realised that it didn't actually cost that much money to connect an STD call across the country.
We've been lied to for all these years.
Found out, and so all of a sudden the rates for long-distance calls started to drop as well.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Now, so 2003, Skype started. Later on, not many years later, eBay bought it because they thought it would be a really good way to have people on an auction actually have some sort of video connection as well. So they thought, here's a great idea. So they paid billions of dollars for it, which is what happened back in the dot-com boom. Anything that was technology related seemed to be, it had to start with $1 billion or it wasn't serious.
Yeah.
And that didn't last that long. They sold off a bit of it. And then Microsoft said, right, we've got some pretty serious bean counters at Microsoft. We've found a company losing $7 million US a year. That's got to be worth $8.5 billion, hasn't it? So they paid $8.5 billion US dollars for Skype in 2011. Wow. And let me say that other number again. This was a business losing US $7 million a year at the time.
Wow.
What some companies back in the day were doing was they'd start up a company, they'd get lots of users, and they'd say, we'll work out the business model later. We'll work out a way to make money out of it, or we'll just get Microsoft to pay us a lot of money for it. That seemed like a reasonable outcome. It got to the stage where they had about 300 million users, monthly users at that stage. Got to the stage about 400 million users were at its peak, not long after that. But then,
so around 2011, it was its peak?
A little bit after that, Microsoft did keep building it from there after they took it over because they didn't change anything. But then they had this idea that they would integrate Skype into the operating system, make it a part of the operating system. So you'd buy your Windows, it would have Skype built in, and that was the go-to. I'm not sure if anyone actually said, how are we going to make money out of this? Because the real attraction of Skype was free calls. I'm not sure how you build a model of a really good business model when the free call concept is the main attraction to the actual model. Now, they did make some money out of other different methods. They had some business concepts. They had some advertising. So there are other things in there, but they were really just playing around the edges. They weren't serious about making money. So they built up a little bit, and then they did a whole rebrand about 2017, and that didn't go down that well. And it started to decline a bit, but then the opportunity of the pandemic. Now, my apologies to anyone who lost someone or was inconvenienced during the pandemic. It did terrible things across the world. But for a company that does video calls, this was your opportunity. This was the payday you'd been waiting for, and they missed the opportunity there.
Well, that's it, because I remember when it was coming in, I was thinking to myself, well, Skype, this is where Skype makes its move. As we were going into lockdown, I was thinking, well, okay, I'm going to be teaching from home and whatnot. But then people were saying, no, we're going Zoom. We're doing Zoom. And so Zoom was just one. And there's Teams, and there was Google had its own version as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and so Skype just didn't get mentioned.
No, that's right. And Skype did become a verb at one stage, a bit like I'm going to Google something, I'm going to Skype someone. So that's pretty impressive. If you can get to the stage where your product, your brand name becomes a verb, wow, that's pretty exciting. So in terms of Skype, I think they missed an opportunity. And part of it, I think, was Microsoft was so keen on integrating it that they forgot to make it easy to use because you needed to get your Microsoft login or your live login. And it just seemed to be too complicated. Zoom, one of the issues with Zoom was its lack of security, but one of its incredible features was its lack of security because it was so easy. Just jump on a call. That's right. So
we had people like jumping into other people's calls and stuff and just appearing in the corner.
I know
doing celebrity cameos and whatnot.
That's right. Yeah. So there were various comedians and celebrities who would just jump on random office calls. So what are we doing about the station in the office here?
Oh, that was something.
So we had Zoom, we had WhatsApp, we had as you said, Google Meet, even FaceTime. People were using FaceTime. So all these competitors came along, but Skype was there first. It should have been in the box seat, but monthly users started to decline. By 2023, when everyone else was exploding, they were down to about 36 million active users, which still isn't too bad, you think. Yeah. But Microsoft is trying to push people across.
36 million users, that's still a lot of users.
That's more than the population of Australia using your product each month.
Yeah,
so that's not too bad.
It wasn't enough to keep them afloat.
Well, I think Microsoft pivoted and said, let's go Teams, which doesn't offer all the same attractions as Skype, and it's more focused on business and obviously more focused on charging you for things rather than free. But they got at the stage, they got down to 28 million active users, and then Microsoft announced about 2-3 months ago that they were going to ring the bell on the 5th of May and say, that's it, Skype's all over. And I thought they might have given it a reprieve. I thought there might have been a bit of a backlash, but no, they said, that's it. It's all over. So that's done. I mean,
with a whimper.
With a whimper.
Not even a whimper.
Not even that. There's still that iconic Skype ring that people could hear. You'd hear that ring.
Yeah.
And I think Skype did a very good job to make that so distinctive that you knew exactly what that was when you heard it. I should insert here some of that audio so people know what I'm talking about. Most people know that.
I wonder if there's any boomers out there that are really angry now. There's no more Skype.
Well, possibly.
So they went out without even a whimper. Now, there might be some people out there, and some people got used to Skype. Well, that was their go-to.
They did, and I read some stories about one lady who used Skype daily with her grandmother, 99-year-old grandmother. So
because her grandmother got it.
Well, but saying to a 99-year-old, you can't use that anymore, use this other one, it's probably not that easy to go and learn that.
Yeah, not at all. I don't think it's easy at all.
Another one I read about was someone who found some emotional closure by looking at old Skype video calls from someone that had passed away. So you probably will lose access to those archives. People got engaged after having a relationship over Skype. So there's all sorts of wonderful human stories about Skype, and that's all gone. So you've got to find an alternative now, which there are alternatives out there.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I actually feel like Skype was there a bit early. The problem with 2003 was that you had, here in Australia anyway, dial-up.
Yeah.
We managed to get 56K out of our dial-up. Woohoo! We got ADSL was just starting, 128, maybe 256K in ADSL. But that was download speed. Upload speeds were much less impressive, and you need the upload to be able to send your video. When those first Skype calls were occurring, and I remember them, they weren't great. The audio calls were okay, but the video calls weren't great. Come a pandemic time frame, people have got nice, fast, well in Australia, NBN connections.
Right. Yep.
So suddenly the technology and the actual medium you were using to use that technology had been matched. Whereas 2003, it was probably almost too early for the technology. So, yeah, well done to Skype.
Yeah, I had a brother, well, still have a brother who lives in Indonesia, and contacting him now is easy. But I remember we got into Skype because of him, like you with your brother.
Yeah.
And we ended up just having the phone calls. I don't think we did so many video calls because it was still too clunky. But
They were in the early days.
a little bit before their time.
Yeah, possibly. So well done, Skype. You did change the world.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And the world now is a much more connected place because of companies like Skype leading the way.
The spy game has kicked up a notch. Now, in cop shows and spy movies, it was one of the henchman's basic roles to frisk the hero for the wired recording devices. Reporters of old used to have to tote a clunky tape recorder to keep track of meetings and catch the big scoop. Now, all you need is a smart bracelet, a pendant or a lapel pin. All cheap as chips and able to be picked up online or at any decent tech store. Perhaps the start of a new era, Matt. All conversations will be recorded.
Imagine that. And it's a bit of a running joke in our family. We've got some cameras around the outside of our house to protect our house. And one day one of our children was having a conversation, and later on that night they were retelling this, and one of the sisters said, no, that's not how it happened. And they argued back and forth about what happened. And they said, check the footage. We'll see what happened, what really happened out there. So, of course, they go and check the footage. Aha, see, I told you I was right. And so from then on, it might have been weeks, months later, whatever happened, wherever it was, check the footage. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
It's not going to lie. Our memories are malleable. We know that.
Yeah.
But the footage isn't going to lie. Now, this is a different concept where you sometimes feel like you might have some videos around your house or maybe some cameras around your business. Maybe you've got dash cam in your car. I've got dash cam on my push bike when I go for a bike ride. So I kind of feel like I'm under surveillance a bit, but not all the time.
Well, there's a self-imposed surveillance.
That's right. That's true.
So we're talking about Big Brother here, but Big Brother is actually yourself.
Correct. Big Brother being myself. That's a creepy concept. So this is going further again where you're using some sort of recording device on your body, as you said, a pendant or a lapel pin. It's not only recording what's happening, it's sending it to the cloud, getting AI to transcribe it, taking action from some of the conversations, and giving you, at the end of the day, week, whatever you want, a complete transcription of your life. Wow. Now, I'm not sure I want to read that because maybe my life's not as exciting as I think it is. When I read back, I go, oh, that's a pretty boring conversation. Why did James hang around and talk to me? He should have left. That was boring. So that's one part of it, but it also takes action. So, hey, James, let's catch up next week at 10 o'clock for a coffee on Thursday. I don't have to think about it because my little monitoring device will go off and book that appointment into my calendar.
In your calendar?
That's right, done.
Yeah, wow.
I've got to get a few things done. I've got to go out and buy some cornflakes and some eggs and some flour. Oh, there's my shopping list in a to-do list already done for me.
I'm just thinking about the times we've had a conversation in the shopping centre. Oh, we should catch up on Friday. And it's one of those things that both of you forget, and that's all right because you weren't really committed anyway. That's right. But now you're committed.
That's it.
Both
Absolutely.
of you are going to commit.
And you've got it recorded. You've got a transcription there. No. James, you told me you'd be here on Friday. But it was even funnier because I read some stories, some reviews of people that have tried this out for a few weeks. And one of them had a murder appointment on Wednesday night at 9 o'clock to murder Joanna.
Right.
Probably not something you want to put in your diary.
That's right.
The forensic
that one on the down low.
That's right. The forensic police probably wouldn't have to look that hard.
Yeah.
But the person wearing the pin was watching a murder show on TV. And there was a conversation that happened on TV the PIN wasn't clever enough to work out that this wasn't a conversation the wearer was having. They thought the wearer was having. They picked up the whole conversation from TV. They were plotting a murder for Joanna at 9 o'clock on Wednesday night. So in the calendar, next day, there's Joanna, must murder Joanna at 9 o'clock. So it doesn't quite get context around that. And obviously listening to a TV show is a bit unusual. But I'm really not that sure that I'd be comfortable talking to someone not knowing whether they're recording me, though there wasn't necessarily a light on. Some of them have the option to say put a light on when they're recording.
So if it's like a bracelet, it's not an obvious thing.
No.
A lapel pin's probably going to be a little bit obvious. It's not like a brooch that looks like a dragonfly or something. It looks like a lump of something that
might be doing something.
Might be recording.
Yeah.
And same with the pendant too, I gather.
Yeah, now we've talked about glasses before, that the light will be on when it's recording you. So, for example, some of the glasses by Meta or Snap, so some of those. But again, wearing a little bracelet, no one would really take much notice of it.
Yeah, and if the pendant's sort of tucked underneath a T-shirt, hemline or your neckline, I should say, yeah.
You wouldn't really notice it. It's a scary world. Now, again, is that going to be used for evil? Quite possibly. Is it going to be used for something useful in your life, to have your life recorded? Oh, gee. I'm okay writing things down that I need to remember or putting them in my diary that I choose.
I'm just ready to be accountable for absolutely everything that I say now, Matt. And I remember you giving me the advice, if you're going to tell a lie, you've got to be prepared to carry it the whole way through.
Did I say that to you? I would have said that to you. I would have said, don't lie, James, don't lie.
Yeah, so it's just easier to tell the truth.
It is.
But sometimes we tactically tell the truth. Yeah, white lies just to say, but... now we're going to be caught.
Now we're going to be caught. It's going to be a transcription of it.
Yeah.
James, you said this.
No.
The other concept, I think, which is a problem, is the legal implication.
In the sticks.
So if I look at the US, for example, and they do like to sue people in the US, in some states they require two-party consent for audio. So you'd almost need to walk up, "G'day, James, how are you going? This conversation's been recorded for coaching purposes." Maybe, I'm not sure why you might justify that. But in some states, so for example in New Jersey and New York, you only need one-party consent to record a conversation. So there'd be no problem with me wearing something in New York.
Because you consent to the conversation.
Exactly right. So I can have the conversation with anyone I like. So where are we going with this? It's one thing having traffic signals with video recorders on there, but walking around recording everything in your life, and then the cloud computing power you need to do all this, the amount of energy that's used for all this, just to record the fact that I had some bacon and eggs for breakfast this morning. Yeah, it's interesting. But
I think anytime you bump into someone in the street, frisk them, ask them if they've got any recording devices.
That's right.
Yeah, before you even say hello.
That's right. Yeah, and then finally you can sign this form that you've got no recording devices, and away you go.
Nostalgia's a curious sort of vice, and the tech world is certainly not immune to pangs of nostalgia. In an age where data is so easily stored in the cloud, portable hard drives are making something of a comeback now. The Buffalo Skeleton hard disk has a sexy, sleek look that just might be the next hot desk accessory, Matt.
It might be, but you've got to be lucky to get one.
Oh.
They're only selling 50 units worldwide.
Right.
There's a sale that starts in June.
You really want a hard disk really badly.
Yeah, and you've got to get it through the lottery system, through their lottery system. So I'm actually going to put in for it because I love the concept.
You can just save stuff on the cloud.
You can, but what I like about this, it's a hard drive, just a 4 terabyte hard drive, so nothing spectacular, except it's got a clear top on it, so it's got a viewing window.
You can watch the disk spin.
Well, no, you can watch the arm move back and forth across the disk. And I remember when I used to do physical repairs to hard drives when I was working in our computer shop, and so there were times when I had to pull apart a hard drive, and I would, just because it was fun, plug it in and just watch the arm go back and forth because it was pretty cool. So you've got a disk spinning at 5,400 or 7,200, even some drives 10,000 revolutions per minute. Then you've got an arm that goes back and forth to various spots, and you've got multi-platters. So you've got the one arm with reading heads across all of those platters. So this arm, while the disk's spinning, goes back and forth crazy, and it's fascinating. And you just think, well, I think anyway, that's cool that arm can go across to a spot, stop on the right track, read that data, go back somewhere else, read that data. Wow, what an incredible bit of engineering.
Together.
That's right. Then I'd put the lid on and I'd go, gee, it's a shame that everyone can't see that arm going back and forth across those discs. So
No one would get any work done.
well, maybe not. They just watch it all day. But now Buffalo have got their skeleton hard disk, which actually shows you the arm because it's got a see-through window on top. You want a disc completely sealed. You don't want it open. I mean, I was working on damaged hard drives when I was doing that work, but you don't want it open normally because just a little bit of dust can throw that out completely. So it's a sealed unit, but these are sealed units with a viewing window on top. So I love the idea. So go and search
And you're in the lottery right now, aren't you?
I haven't done it yet. I thought I'd tell our listeners about it first, but absolutely, I am going to go on the lottery. They're not that expensive. They're $700 for a hard drive, which is expensive for a 4 terabyte hard drive.
But this one you can watch.
You can watch it. How cool is that? So go and look for Buffalo. Their parent company is Melco, Melco. It's all about celebrating their 50th anniversary of the Melco company.
Yeah, right.
And they came up with something different and cool to actually do that.
And just remember, if you don't win the lottery, then you can still save your stuff on the cloud.
That's right. You can still save your data. I don't know that I'd even use it to save data. I just put it in our business somewhere and let people watch a hard drive spinning and go back and forth on the arm. I just think that looks pretty cool. So go to look at it. It's been done before, way back. I think Western Digital probably, it might have been 15, 20 years ago maybe.
Yeah,
they did something
right.
similar where they had a viewing window. It was only a pretty little, maybe a 150 gig hard drive or something like that. But it was, again, the same concept of showing off what a hard drive does inside. I've actually got a bit of artwork hanging in my garage at the moment, of all places, of an artistic impression of a hard drive with the armature sitting there and the hard drive spinning, because I just think the hard drive is a beautiful thing, James. Not enough attention is paid to the beauty of a hard drive.
You do have to be a tech nerd to get into this, though.
And it's going out because we're all going solid-state drives now.
That's
so
right,
We're not
yeah.
going to see this
So
arm going back and
It's
forth.
going to be like the vinyl record player of hard drives.
Exactly right.
Domestic robotics has become something of a boom industry given the flurry of developments in recent months. Today, we're taking another look at the new AI model called the Pi 0.5. Matt, the race to clean your house is well and truly underway.
I keep looking for stories about cleaning my house because, as you know,
I know. There is a theme that keeps coming up.
I want someone that's not me or my wife or my children, because I've given up on them, to clean my house. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And we're getting there step by step. Now, the breakthrough for this one is very cool because, and I've got a concept that I'm going to hit my neighbours up with soon, the idea of this Pi 0.5, and I
reckon you say Pi 0.5, which sounds cooler.
Oh, yeah.
And I stuffed it up when I announced it the first time, so I apologise to everyone. But the Pi 0.5.
The 5.5. So, which you could probably rename to the Pi 1.57 because you go half of 3.14 and away you go. So, Pi 0.5. Okay, I'm happy with that. And even where the name comes from, the company is called Physical Intelligence. So they've obviously taken the P and the I from physical intelligence,
makes sense.
and then they put it together, and then they're actually using the pi symbol as part of the name of this. And then the 0.5 or the 0.5 is about the fact that this isn't even version 1. They're not even at version 1 yet. Because normally you get, I don't want the version 1 of that. Maybe wait till version 2. This isn't even at version 1. This is at 0.5. So we're getting there.
So this is your entry level?
This is before entry level.
This is before the entry level.
But what they're doing is they're trying to work on the intelligence for a robot that can learn to do things in a foreign environment. Now, we know that robots are fantastic on the assembly line of a car manufacturer, where my job as a robot is to weld those two bits of metal together, and I'll do it really accurately every single time. Don't confuse me with another job. That's my job.
Yeah.
I'll do it fast, I'll do it accurately, everything's okay. A robot around the house doesn't have that same ability. Now, we know that we can get robots trained up on a house, a long time to train up, and then they're not too bad. But still, sometimes there are clothes in different positions. So
Pets that poop.
Pets that poop, that's right. So that confuses the robots, that's right. So now the idea of this is to try and work out a way to have a robot that can handle an environment that's new every single time. And that's where they're working on this. Now, where I'm going with this concept, why I love this, is because I reckon the first robot that comes out that'll do my laundry and cook an omelette for me will be expensive, maybe 100 grand expensive, maybe more expensive than I would like to pay. But I reckon if I can convince 10 of my neighbours, maybe 20 of my neighbours, to all kick in a few grand each, I can say there's not enough work in my house to have one robot dedicated to sit around all day and drink pina coladas and then for half an hour do the work that's needed. There's enough work down our street for 20 neighbours, say, to get together. So we'll all kick in, we'll buy this robot, it'll start at someone's house, and work its way down the house. So we've got 24/7 robot just working its way down the street. We're all contributing. To do that, you need a robot that can handle a different environment, 20 different environments. What the heck?
Right.
We'll lease it out to a few friends. James, we'll lease you a robot for a week. You can come out there. Mother's Day, we'll lease you a robot to go and take care of the house on Mother's Day. So then it needs to be able to walk into your household, not knowing the layout of your household, and actually be able to perform useful functions. So very important.
Now, is this the Pi 0.5? You're promising that the Pi 0.5 can do all that?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. Right.
The Pi 0.5 says we're working on doing all that.
Okay.
I don't know they've come up with the concept of buying it and sharing it out amongst the neighbourhood, but that was the first thing I thought of when I read this, because what they did was they trained it on literally thousands of environments of images and then fed all that into an AI tool and said, now when you come up with an environment, you'll be able to learn how to work around that. And so they found that the time to walk into a new environment and be useful is dramatically shortened over a traditional robot. So that's all exciting. Right. And what I also like about this is a specialisation. You know you're advancing in a category when you get more and more specialised. So this company, Physical Intelligence, they don't build robots. They're not going to sell me a robot. I'm going to buy a robot from someone that's got a model, a training model, built by Physical Intelligence, slotted into a physical robot. So they're almost building the operating system or the learning system for other robots, because it's complicated building a robot.
Yeah.
It's complicated building the learning system. So they're just going to focus on the learning system. When we get to that level of specialisation, you know we're progressing in a category. So that's all exciting. I can see the day, James, when we've got Rosie the robot around my household without the wheel. The wheel is a bad idea.
Yeah.
On a cartoon, the wheel is fine. But around my house, I haven't got steps or stairs, but I've got bumps, and a wheel becomes complicated.
Just got to make sure that robot that you put the operating system into can fold undies.
That's it. Fold undies. Who wants to fold it? Who's ironing undies and folding undies? I'm against that in particular.
I fold my undies.
Oh, no.
Uber is a company synonymous with thinking outside the box to provide streamlined service for its customers. Now, recently we looked at how in some cities, the Uber fleet is even going to include autonomous cars. But in a very interesting development, Uber is now leaning back into old school cash transactions to cover your ride, Matt.
Well,
Cash.
I think this is a backward step. I'm not a fan. I've been a fan of
But
cashless.
surely you have two options. So cash is one of the options.
I'm okay if that's what Uber want to do, but it seems like the world is moving in the other direction. And this is in the UK. They've got a number of cities they're trialling this in. They're changing it in some cities. In London at the moment, no, you can still only do it via some form of electronic payment. And what I do like about Uber is that the Uber driver that turns up knows that his payment is safe because it's been done via the app. So the person can't get to the other end and go, I left my wallet behind.
Or taxi runners.
Or taxi runner, that's right. They can get out and run and the guy goes, sucked in, I've already got your money. So that's, to me, part of the focus for Uber is to say, let's move forward with the technology. And you couldn't have done an Uber maybe 10 years ago. You didn't have the same number of people using electronic transactions. You didn't have the tracking ability with GPS. You didn't have the data capabilities of phones. So there are some industries that have been created, an entire industry, because of the technology we've got. That's very exciting. So then to say, you know what, we're going to go cash as a payment option, to me seems like a backward step.
Is it a move by conspiracy theorists who don't want to be tracked? They want to ride in Ubers, but they don't want to be tracked.
I think it's a move by Uber to compete with taxis.
Yeah, right.
Because they want to take over the world. They don't want any taxis left. And taxi, one advantage you have, if I like to use cash, I know I can get in a taxi and I'm okay with that because they'll take my $20. I get in an Uber, can't do it. So it might be people that don't want to be tracked. It might be people that don't want to be tracked for good reasons. There might be some situation where they don't want to be tracked.
But there are some people who just want to pay cash.
There are some people who just don't like the idea of plastic, and that's fine. Some people don't like plastic for budgeting reasons, a whole range of different reasons people like cash. Some people want to be able to use the cash because they just printed it yesterday, so that's a bit easier for them to use cash. But in the UK, for example, in 2014, about 60% of all transactions were made in cash. 2024, 20% of all transactions were made in cash.
Right.
And I was even surprised at that number. 20% still seems like a large number for me. But then again, I must admit, always, I don't know the last time I carried cash. I'm always using electronic transactions of whatever description. So 20%, it's probably about right. In Australia, I think it would be less, but I've got no data to back me up on that. But that's 20%. If you're looking at taking over the entire market, if you're Uber, you basically say, well, we've just knocked ourselves out of 20% of the market if we won't accept cash. So I don't know how they're going to go across the world. I don't know if they're talking about doing this in Australia, for example.
Yeah, because the driver's going to have to start carrying cash to be able to pay change.
That's right. And that was a concept that drivers brought up. And this seems a bit crazy, but if you, for example, take a fare and it comes to $42 and the person hands over $50 and you don't have change because you're an Uber driver, not a taxi driver, Uber will then credit $8 to your account, which kind of seems like they're mixing digital with cash. And I'm not sure that I'd be loving the idea of handing out $50 and saying, I gave you $8 change in a credit on the Uber app. I'd go, where's my $8? I want to go and buy a coffee. Thanks very much. So it's a hard one because I used to love the taxis you get into when I was a kid and you'd jump in a taxi in Sydney and they'd have the little coin machine.
Counters,
So all the little spring-loaded ones, you go, and I go, oh, that's pretty cool. Of course, I don't see many taxi drivers that anymore, but then again, I'm always paying in card, so I don't suppose they probably still got them tucked away somewhere there, but most people I imagine would pay cards, probably 80% of people. So it's something that the UK is looking at as well about whether or not, this is the UK Treasury Committee, whether they'll get to the stage where they'll say they will mandate that businesses must accept cash. They're not saying that at this stage. Maybe they will in the future because it does disadvantage some people. I wish they'd mandate businesses to take credit card because I find it frustrating when I walk in somewhere and they don't take credit card because that's all I've got. So how can I do business with you? But at this stage, it's up to the individual business. So Uber going cash, I'd be interested to see where this goes, how long they do it for, how happy Uber drivers are, and then see if they get a few people doing runners again. Like
how many
taxis
Uber runners are they going to get?
That's right.
Yeah. Now, we're continuing on the subject of taxi transport. It's been a while since we last heard from Waymo. They were the autonomous taxi service helping to make people's way around the streets of San Francisco, effectively since only June last year. Well, I know they had Waymos before then, but they've only been really broad spread across San Francisco since June of last year. Anyway, who thought that these were a passing novelty? Well, they'll be shocked now to hear how things are going for Waymo, Matt.
They're going very well. So they've now got driverless rides in Phoenix, San Francisco still obviously, Los Angeles, Austin. Over 250,000 paid trips are completed each and every week by a Waymo vehicle. So Waymo, just to go back a step, Waymo's owned by Alphabet. Alphabet is obviously Google, so Alphabet's the parent company of Google. So they've got a few dollars behind them, and they like to focus on technology solutions. They basically,
it still seems like such a big deal to hop in a car without a driver.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you kind of get used to hopping in a car. Actually, I got in trouble for my Tesla today because I was driving home and I use the auto steer, the self-driving function.
Yeah, right.
And so there were times when I was just resting my hand lightly on the steering wheel and it would come up with a message to say, please put some pressure on the steering wheel. It doesn't look like you're paying attention. And so I do that. And I've done it before where I actually thought, I wonder what happens if I just don't. If I pretend I fall asleep and I put no pressure on the steering wheel, and what it did was it gave me some warnings, flashed up some things, made some noise, etc., because it's thinking you're not paying attention. And then it finally slowed me down to a stop and then gave me a warning to say, sorry, you haven't been paying attention. Auto steer function is disabled for the rest of your drive.
Oh, you have been sent to the naughty corner.
Exactly what I thought. I thought I'm in trouble from my Tesla. So today I wasn't doing that.
Who's the boss of who?
That's right. I was paying attention. I was doing it. But again, I just had my hand resting lightly on the steering wheel. And it came up a few times. Then it gave me the same warning. And I went, I'm in trouble again. So I was in the naughty corner. But when I stopped, I actually had a warning pop up. But it said, you've done this before. You've done it again. If you do it 4 more times, auto steer will be disabled on this vehicle permanently because I'm a very naughty boy.
Wow. Do you get your money back?
That's right. So it's fascinating.
Wow.
So talk about the naughty corner. So we aren't used to getting in there now. And look at that. My Tesla, I'm in trouble for not paying attention.
These Waymo taxis, do they even have steering controls? Do we know?
No.
I
don't say that with confidence. Let me think.
Yeah,
Because they used to have a person sitting in them in the driver's seat to just give people a bit of confidence, but they'd sit there with their arms folded and have a chat to the person.
With the book.
So they must still have a control in there.
Yeah.
They probably do because they take a Jaguar I-Pace. They're typically the electric Jaguar I-Pace.
Okay.
And they're converting those. So it would seem like more work to pull the steering wheel out. But then again, that's where another person could sit. You don't want someone there being able to play with control. Yeah. So that's a good question. I'll research that and come back to you next week. So basically you're getting to the stage where they're rolling out more. They've got 2,000 new Jaguars they're rolling out. They've already got 1,500, so they're growing their fleet quite incredibly. They've also looked at the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is an SUV style. I've had one of those vehicles before. So they've got different vehicles they're working on, but ultimately they're going ahead in leaps and bounds. Now, they do restrict it to where you go. In those cities that I mentioned, they've got a certain radius around the CBD that they work in because, again, they want to know the environment very well. They don't go out on freeways at this stage. They were doing some trucking work on freeways, but they've kind of pulled back from that a little bit. Not to say they'll never do it, but they really want to focus on what they can do. And they believe what they can do effectively is in congested CBDs, know the environment inside out, back to front, make sure you're comfortable with that environment and just stay on that environment. So if you booked a Waymo to go from somewhere in that CBD outside the CBD, it wouldn't accept the booking, for example.
Right, okay.
You'd have to do it in that area. So it does sound exciting. I want them in Australia. I want to be able to go and jump in a Waymo or any brand. I don't care.
I think they would go off. There's definitely people who don't like the idea, and that's not for them. So don't get in an autonomous taxi if you don't want it.
No, that's right. Now, you might still be involved in some way with an autonomous taxi if you had an accident with one, for example,
right.
and that has happened. But the research shows that, and this is a research paper done by Waymo, so I take it with a grain of salt if you like, that Waymo vehicles had 85% fewer serious crashes than human drivers over a sample space of 56.7 million miles. So a reasonable sample space, that is. Yeah. So they presumably compared crashes from the same number of miles around a CBD environment, not a highway environment, from human drivers to autonomous. Now, we know they make mistakes. We know that they haven't got it right. The technology isn't perfect. But autonomous drivers don't fall asleep. They don't get tired. They don't get distracted. They don't have their mobile phone ring. They don't talk on the mobile phone. They don't drink alcohol or take drugs before they drive. So you've got to be in front a long way, but they still get things wrong. But in any of those collisions that have occurred, they've actually worked on the software to say, okay, that's what happened in this one. Let's change that, which is much more effective than saying to all drivers across the world, hey, a guy fell asleep at the wheel, don't do that anymore, because sometimes that still happens, obviously. So it is fascinating. It's happening. For people that think it's not going to it's happening now. And when you've got the backing of Google, you can afford to take a few losses, a few hits along the way before you get it right. But autonomous taxis are coming to everywhere. So there are some jobs. There are some jobs we know that may not exist in a few years' time.
Yep.
Uber drivers, whether it be cash or card, and taxi drivers, maybe they're not occupations that I tell my kids to go into.
Well, I was just going to say that, in June it was only in San Francisco, and now you've listed off, about 3 or 4, maybe 5 cities in the US. Yeah. That'll go exponential. They're
doing some testing at the moment in Tokyo as well, so they're taking it internationally. So
we know that China's got autonomous vehicles all around. So
very fascinating.
Fans of the film WALL-E will appreciate this next story. In a world where we humans are just so resource hungry and so wasteful about it, the question about just how effective current recycling efforts are is a valid one. Indeed, the process of recycling is complex and an energy-intensive one, but nothing that a little AI robotics can't give a little nudge, Matt.
You make it sound so simple, James. Yeah, just throw some AI at that, will you? And that'll solve that problem.
I mean, you think about the plastics that got to get recycled, they've all got a code on them.
They have.
And,
And more than that, they look different. The different types of plastics look different. And so there's a company called Glacier. They do recycling. That's their kind of core focus, if you like. And they've installed 4 AI-powered recycling robots at their Seattle facility. And so from this perspective, not quite the same as the car manufacturing I talked about where it does a certain weld and that's it. In this particular scenario, they're looking at all this rubbish that's coming along to pull out the recycling and have it separated into the various types of recycling. Now, you can do this with humans. Humans are on the factory floor doing this, but it's expensive with humans. Yeah. And then you start to get to the point where you say it wasn't worth it from a cost perspective. And unfortunately, when companies can't do it profitably, then sometimes they don't do it at all. And so then recycling is not able to be done. And so you end up with landfill we'd rather recycle this.
Yeah.
You throw some AI at it, as you say, just throw a bit of AI on the mix there, sprinkle a bit of AI across the top, magic dust, and suddenly you get to the stage where you can use robotics and AI to pull that into very specific different categories so you can recycle it, you can do it profitably, you can make it work better, and you can apply specific recycling processes to those different types. So this has started, they've only just started this in terms of the AI, but they've found the results so far have been very good, probably around 90% they're getting right. So that sounds pretty impressive.
That's good. Yeah.
What I do love about it is they're using robots to do it, and then they've got some other robots at the end of the conveyor belt to check on the work. I don't know what happens to the first robots. You were slacking off on the job. Didn't you see this one come through? So they've actually got a second set of robots at the end of the conveyor belt to check to make sure that things are being picked up the first time around. Now, I'm assuming that's part of the training process, so then the first ones come across. Or maybe there is so much in the first time, the first pass, they're able to get most of it right, and then the second ones pick up the last little bit. But I did imagine just sitting there afterwards going, comparing their notes on the day's work. You were pretty good today, but you did miss those blue bottles.
Yeah, I know yellow bins. They've got paper and cardboard. They've got plastics and various sorts of plastics, and they've got steel tins, and they've got aluminium cans in them. And so I can imagine that, okay, you're pulling out certain papers, and you might want to, I don't know, divide up the papers on a different conveyor belt. Maybe you want to divide up the different plastics on a different conveyor belt as well. So I can imagine it's a multi-step process for various robots.
Yeah, and I think the other part is that humans, being humans, sometimes don't put all the correct recycling in their correct bins. Yeah. So there'd still be some stuff comes through that isn't recyclable.
Yeah, it's not even recyclable.
That's right. So they've got that to take account of as well. The other thing that I found fascinating, and I just wonder how you would do this, they talked about the fact when Glacier mentioned all of this and information they've been doing, they said, we've trained our AI on billions of photos to identify all the different types of materials. And I just started thinking about how do you train anyone with billions, because billions is a big number.
It is a big number, isn't it?
To get billions of photos, so presumably someone, a human maybe, has to identify this photo is this type of plastic. Now, to do that on one, that's okay. Then when you do it to 1 billion, how do they get 1 billion photos that were correctly identified? If you've got them, if you've got the 1 billion photos that have all identified what type of plastic it is, for example, that you can feed into a tool, I get that, but how do you have 1 billion photos? Where did you get 1 billion photos from of those plastics? I mean, I'm a freelance photographer. I'm looking for some work. Can you just take 1 billion photos of plastics and identify them correctly? Yeah. That's a big job. Let's throw a lot of people at that job. So I would love to know where that comes from. You mentioned a white lie before. Maybe this is a marketing method.
I reckon you can take video and then go still frame by still frame.
Someone's got to identify it, though.
Someone's still got to tick the box, haven't they?
Someone's got to say what that was.
If you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 1 billion seconds, 37.1 years have passed.
And you're saying if you did it one number per second?
Yeah, one number per second.
Which starts to get difficult when you get to numbers like 357,828 in 1 second. That starts to get pretty tough.
Yeah, but that's still 37.1.
So if you could identify...
So maybe there were 2 people on the job.
Maybe it was more than one. The freelance photographer said, have you got a friend? So you're saying if I could identify... If I had a photo, assume I've got 1 billion photos sitting around, just ready to be looked at. If I could identify what that was and I could categorise that within 1 second.
Yes.
If it's just me, 37 years. So if there's 2 of us, that cuts it down to about, say, 17, 18 years. So we're getting there. So if you throw 1 billion people at the problem...
If we get 2 people and one of their mums to... Yeah, so you've now got 3 people there.
That's right. Assuming they work 24/7 for the next 18 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's good, though. I like the idea that we're getting better at recycling and better identifying that recycling. And I can think that there'll be more of this. And obviously, the more they use it, the more training. So that's good. We can build up that library of 1 billion in the real world as that conveyor belt goes past.
Yeah. The engineers at Kia have been working overtime lately. The race for car manufacturers to come up with a workable solution for the adventure off-road EV market is well and truly underway, with big prize money on offer in sales. This is, of course, the market where range anxiety is the greatest. So, Matt, what are the new features that could make the Kia Weekender, now I've inserted some vowels into that. Matt will explain later. The Kia Weekender, a big hit for off-roaders.
Well, so the Weekender, as you correctly called it there, WKNDR is what they've
Vowels
called
are too
it.
expensive,
They
especially
are.
these.
And I think it's just a groovy marketing term.
It is.
It is interesting, though, isn't it? If you want to shorten a word, you take out the vowels, and most humans can read.
We'll get it.
That's right. I'm sure you've seen that famous bit of text where it's completely written almost vowelless and shorten every word, and a human looks at that and they can read that whole paragraph without a problem. I don't know if AI can do that. Let's see. Let's throw that one at AI 1 billion times, see if you can work that one out. So Kia and Hyundai, obviously sister companies, are working on some pretty cool EV concepts. And I've got a Hyundai at the moment. I've owned a previous Hyundai EV, so I think they're doing quite a good job in getting there. What they've got is they've got a platform beyond vehicle, PBV, of course, range, where they're basically saying we've got a different platform for cargo vehicles, passenger vehicles, crew vehicles, and wheelchair access vehicles. And the idea here is that they're building the platform and you can put whatever you want on top. Whatever suits you, you can drop on top. And I see more and more companies doing this. I know Volkswagen are doing something similar. So the idea here is that the platform can be the same for different types of vehicles. How you put a lid on it really is how you define what type of car it is. But is there any reason that the base needs to be dramatically different? In some cases, yes. But generally, the wheelbase, the size of that, you might have a couple of variants and then you put different lids on. And so that's what they're doing here with their different variants. Now, the Weekender is really showing off what you can do with EVs if you want to get a bit funky about what you do with EVs. Designed for camping and overlanding. So it's big. So it's 2.44 metres tall. It's about the same length as a Ford F-150 pickup, which is the new measurement in car length, obviously.
We'll convert that to swimming pools later.
That's right. They've done something which I find interesting. They've integrated solar panels into the rooftop. Now, we've talked about that before, surface area. There's not enough surface area.
Yeah.
But this looks like a big combi van. So you've got a bit more surface area than normal. And they've done this really cool thing with the wheels. They've got spinning turbine-style wheels to generate energy from wind.
I think that's really cool.
Now, when you're driving along, it's the old thing about you're sailing a boat, so you put a fan on the sailboat and you blow the fan, you go, doesn't that work? Well, obviously it doesn't. The same sort of concept here, as you're driving, the turbines on the wheels spin, so you can go forever because you're just creating energy out of nothing. It doesn't work like that.
No.
So I found it fascinating about this, whether it's a nice gimmick or whether it's meant to sit there on a windy day generating some energy, but how much energy is that going to generate?
Maybe if you park it in a stream.
Well, that's the other thing you
In
can
the
do.
water?
It can do that as well. As long as they're spinning, so it can be from water or from wind.
Yeah.
But I just didn't think it was going to generate that much electricity from a bit of wind blowing through the
But
wheels.
it's supposed to delay the discharge of the battery rather than charge a battery up, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not. I suppose you're not saying, we'll park it there for half an hour, we're fully charged. But if you're out camping somewhere and you do have a stream nearby or some wind, you can be out there camping and you're still getting your battery charged up over a few days maybe. But the whole idea is let's see how different and interesting we can be.
It's just an innovative idea.
It is an innovative idea.
Yeah.
So I do like it. I also like the interior rail system. So it's really almost an open plan with rails, and you can put whatever you want in there. You can have lounge seating or tables. I used to like the idea when you'd hire a big vehicle with the kids where you can turn around a table in the vehicle and play cards on it, for example, while you're driving along, some backwards, some forwards, in a decent-sized van that you might have. And so that was a pretty cool concept. But the same sort of thing here, turn that around, do what you want to do with it. So it's really just an open shell with a driver's seat in there, and away you go. Big wheels, like 18-inch wheels with 35-inch tyres on there. So it can handle pretty big terrain on there.
Yep.
What I do like is this is one concept. This is Kia just showing off what you can do. But when you take away the idea that you need to have an engine somewhere that's got to be fitted somewhere in the vehicle and it's pretty constrained, and then a petrol tank somewhere, and then a drive shaft, you take all those things away and just say you just have to have a motor to drive the wheels and a battery somewhere built into the body, built into the base, whatever you want. Suddenly you can design cars completely differently.
I think it'll be really interesting when real users have got to start sending in their feedback on these things just to see just how it goes.
Yeah, and the problem, I suppose, with part of it is they've got to generate enough sales to justify that design. But by having a common platform, you don't care if you don't generate a huge number of sales. And I can see third-party companies saying, buy the Kia platform, we'll build a different top on that. So you can be unique in your street, or you can have something built just to your liking rather than customising a car that's already there. You just buy a base and customise the lid that goes on top. Now, I'm oversimplifying it just a touch there, but there is absolutely potential to have those customised vehicles based on this solid base that you might have. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting times, I
Watch
think.
this space, folks. Now, back in the 80s, in some schools at least, winning social capital was as easy as owning a pencil case with secret compartments. Hit a button and a secret drawer for your special texters would spring open. Hit another button and a surprise door would reveal your best erasers. Later it became about your backpack, and it had secret pockets and Velcro detachable bits and bobs all over it. Nowadays, though, folks, it's now all about the LED screen on your backpack. Matt, tell the kids how they're going to win the playground, the king of the playground in 2025, with AI-powered backpacks.
So go and look up a brand called Carbon. They specialise on taking everyday products and adding a bit of AI into the mix. And so they've done that with backpacks. They've got a Neuron pack and a Cyber pack. The Cyber pack is designed with a complete LED screen on the outer shell. So they're a hard sort of backpack, a hard shell backpack, which I don't mind because I normally carry some electronics in there. I want them protected. And on the back, you can program it to do, well, pretty much anything. You can put memes on there. You can put a GIF on there so it can be moving on the backpack. It can just have lettering on there. They started off first of all thinking about cyclists or people on scooters having something on the back that was big enough and loud enough that cars wouldn't run into them. Then they went, well, we can put something on there, some red flashing lights, but we can do lots of things with that.
Do anything you
So
want.
then they started putting turn signals on the back. So when you're on your bike, you can actually indicate through some clever bit of technology and voice activation if you want, where it can actually have turn signals on the backpack, bigger probably than a blinker on a normal car. And then they went, well, what the heck? We can do whatever we like.
If you have a GoPro on your chest, you could project the image that's in front of you and it looked like there's a big hole in your body.
Which might be bad because someone glances there and they don't see the rest of you there and they just drive straight through you. So you could put pretty much anything you want there. And again, you can change it as often as you like. The battery life wasn't too bad there. It gave about 6 to 8 hours battery life, so that wasn't too bad. And I'm not probably carrying around my backpack for 6 to 8 hours. I'm carrying it from A to B, which might be for 20 minutes, half an hour, maybe on a train or somewhere. But I just love the idea that we're just coming up with excuses to use technology. I don't really need an LED on the back of my backpack, but I love the idea.
If you can have it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine. I wonder how long they'll take before they're banned at school, because you could put all sorts of funny
Yeah,
messages
that's
on
right.
there.
You could have, the formulae for all your maths formula.
That's right. Sit the backpack to the side of the classroom and just glance over there. And I also thought that sometimes friends would take other friends' phones, and then next thing you know, they start putting some things on the back of the backpack. And sorry, I picked up your phone by mistake, and the next thing you know, someone's walking on there, kick me on the back of my backpack. Surely the classic old joke there. So it does sound pretty cool, though. And I just about need a new backpack, you know. So I might have to look at one of these as a cool backpack, just as a technology
King of the
building.
playground.
Yeah, that's me.
All right, that's all there is for today, folks. The guy with the end music has arrived, and that means we've got about a minute to squeeze our last words in. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
Well, I have cheated, and I've just looked up, and yes, the Jaguar I-Pace Waymo retains a steering wheel. Don't have to wait till next week now, so we've done
See,
it
I'd be
here.
worried about my autonomous vehicle being driven in by strangers because they'd want to play with it.
Yeah, that's right. If you jumped in the driver's seat, I'm sure you can't probably if they've got a steering wheel there, but if you jumped in there and you meant to stay there and not touch anything, you'd just want to, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So presumably it's still active there if it needed to be. So apparently it's pretty cool because passengers like to sit there and watch things happening, watch the steering wheel turning, watch things happening as if there was a driver there and it's not actually there. So, yeah, apparently they keep that there, and presumably it's a safety feature as well, so that if you really did need to grab the steering wheel, I don't know if the car reacts bad. Did you grab the steering wheel? Maybe if you think it's about driving
Yeah,
over
I'm
a
just
cliff.
wondering what sort of, if you were to grab the steering wheel, what would happen? And surely everyone thinks that.
Probably. If you see that there, surely you would. But I think they have got plans to introduce vehicles in the future without steering
Without
wheels, but at the
steering
moment, yes, they've still got steering wheels in there. So there you go.
very
That's
handy.
relying on my research just in the last few seconds there, so hopefully that's correct.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson. Once again, folks, we're the homegrown Tech Talk, and that means we're the best sort of Tech Talk. I'm your host, James Eddy, and it's been another pleasure bringing you our healthy little podcast each week, and we hope that you tune in another week's time. We'll have a fresh new episode all ready for you, rip-roaring and ready to go. Look forward to catching you then, folks. Take care until then.